So kind of rolling into nutrition perfectly is, yes, this element also impacts your nutrition because based on where you're at in your cycle, your digestion process is different, your metabolism shifts and is a little bit different, and cravings and appetite and what sounds good is different kind of based on where you're at in where you're at with your hormones. So in follicular phase, so reminder, follicular is right after menstrual phase. Nutrition that is supportive and often very natural and intuitive during this time is fresh fruits and veggies. This is the time where a salad sounds pretty dang good. It's a time where if you are eating mostly raw, but if you are cooking your foods using very minimal heat, so sauteing or steaming foods, that fresh, vibrant foods sound so good during these phases. And there's also various food lists, but as you guys get very intuitive with what it is that you're eating, you will often find like it changes throughout the month, and follicular and ovulation are very much the same. And the reason why we want to focus on the fresh raw fruits and vegetables as much as possible during these phases is because we are wanting our body to, yes, rise in estrogen, but we want our body to eliminate excess estrogen. And how our body does that is through fiber, and fiber is found in plants. And we want that fiber to bind with excess estrogen so it eliminates out of our body, because it's that excess estrogen that can cause a lot of those PMS problems when our menstrual phase rolls around. So what we do right after our menstrual phase and midway through our cycle and all the way through our cycle really is what's going to impact how heavy these like fluctuating hormones hit based on how we are nourishing. So we're wanting to focus on those fresh, raw fruits and veggies during this time of follicular and ovulation. During follicular and ovulation, appetite is actually lowered. You may notice during this phase, you're not that hungry that often. Intermittent fasting may become fairly simple and easy for you to just naturally follow during this time, because our body isn't necessarily like needing us to consume more food for fuel. Okay. So those are just two things to know, and how I talk about this in a practical way all the time, in the sense of I want this to be realistic for you and your family. So kind of how I break it down simply when it comes to like, mom, what's for supper? How can you sync with your cycle without your family members even knowing you're doing this? And I take the simple taco night. So during follicular phase, for me, my taco night often looks like street tacos. Now I am a simple kind of gal, so I get the street taco kit from Costco, but it's chopped like marinated chicken. There's this cabbage, and I mix it with the crema, cheese, salsa on a corn tortilla. It's like street taco style. And then in ovulation, it's more like mom is eating more of like taco salad style, where I'm having lots of greens, lots of like chopped fresh vegetables on there, pico de gallo, salsa, avocado. Like maybe I'm doing some shrimp for my protein that night. Chicken's still very appropriate during ovulation phase as well. But like when it comes to ovulation phase, I'm just really focused on eating as much fresh, raw fruits and veggies as possible, and how that's kind of how I make it a practical way. Now, once again, the second half of our phase, luteal and into menstrual phase, this is where our mind game of diet culture, of what we've been taught, this is what the element that tends to be what we resist. Because even though fresh salads felt so good and so vibrant and sounded good during follicular and ovulation, as you roll into luteal phase, you really do have an increased amount of cravings. Why? Because our metabolism increases and we need roughly over 200 more calories during luteal phase. So if you're in like a calorie cutting type of diet lifestyle, you actually are disserving your body if you try to drop calories and fight that, like, I'm more hungry feeling during this phase. Now let's break it down to a practical sense. Having at least 200 calories is really like sneaking in another mini meal or type of snack. So maybe during follicular and ovulation, you're good with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But during late luteal, maybe you want to have an earlier breakfast instead of waiting till 10 a.m. or 11 or whatever it is. You're having an earlier breakfast, and it's just that earlier breakfast that is your extra 200 calories throughout the day. Now that's just a rough number. Everybody's body is different, but in essence, our metabolism goes up. We need to eat a little bit more during luteal phase. And if we don't, the processes that are going on in our bodies is going to be stripping calories from other resources. You want to fuel it through food. You also want to fuel it more through complex carbohydrates to help your body sustain your blood sugar levels. So you might notice during late luteal in particular, your body tends to want smaller meals throughout the day. Whereas in follicular and ovulation, you were like, I wasn't even thinking about my food in that realm, in that sense. And knowing that healthy carbohydrates during this phase will provide that fiber and also extra calories and nutrition for sustaining your blood sugar. And it's just this natural, like, okay, yeah, I do need to eat a little bit more during this phase. I do need to focus a little bit more on consistently maintaining my blood sugar levels. And you'll just notice that this is a natural essence. Cooking methods during this phase changes up. So this is when our digestion is starting to change, and we want to start cooking down our foods more to process it. So it's a little bit more processed and not as hard on our digestion to pass through. So baking, roasting, air frying your veggies before you're consuming them, you'll notice they sound a lot better, also digest a lot better. Root vegetables are really, really great. Like thinking of this time as your autumn before winter, you're in that preparation, you're kind of maximizing some stores and reserves for what is to come in winter. And there's one more thing on luteal and nutrition that I wanted to say. It slipped to my mind, but this is also just a really important time to focus on the micronutrients of B vitamins, magnesium, and vitamin D, because those three will really help support those like harsh cravings, those cravings where it's like, I need chocolate now. I want to just be snacking on these carbohydrates. Also, B vitamins are great for energy. So during this phase is a great time to just make sure that you're really focusing on those. And then rolling into our digestion, that's kind of what I am talking about, is with rolling into menstrual phase, our digestion, our body's going through so much that it slows down our digestion even more. So during menstrual phase, it's a great time to focus on liquid-based foods as much as you can. So soups and stews and smoothies and various things like that. But if you are cooking and roasting vegetables, and this came so apparent to me one day when I was at a friend's house and she knows I tell this story all the time. I was at her house for lunch and for dinner, and I was in my late luteal phase. For lunch, we had a beautiful spread of fresh veggies. She put out romaine lettuce. We had some chicken to throw on top, and we had these amazing like chicken salads that were awesome. But because I was in my late luteal phase, my digestion was so wonky after eating that meal that I was like, I needed to excuse myself for a little while, but I just knew the awareness was there. And then the second meal, the dinner that we had, was like a crock pot chicken burritos. So the chicken and rice and beans were all cooked together. And we topped it with some things like pico de gallo. I think there was some lettuce, cheese, and whatnot. And that to me felt so good. Like I ate that and I was like, this feels so nourishing to me. And the host that I was at was in her opposite phase. So she was in more follicular, and she was like, oh, because I felt really good after lunch and I'm not feeling that great in my digestion right now. And it just brings that awareness. So going back to that practicality of taco night, during late luteal, you make it kind of burrito bowl style. Maybe this is the time where you use pork or beef, beans, rice, and the hardiness of your meal is coming from that cooked down food. You of course could top it with flavors of like hot sauce, some lettuce, some pico de gallo, some guacamole to like add to the variety for taste of it. But the base of it is that complex carbohydrate, protein, and healthy fat. And it makes it practical for the day to day. And then rolling into menstrual phase, you could definitely do some sort of like taco broth based soup or any sort of meat, vegetables, soups, or stews during your phases. That is supportive of your body staying focused on what's going on with your menstrual phase instead of trying to digest a bunch of really digest and break down a bunch of raw foods. So that is what I have on nutrition. Do you have any questions on that or comments?
No, I mean, it's amazing to me. And, it's a lot. So I know that a lot of people listening are like, wow, oh my gosh, this is so much information at once. So where would you suggest that they start with this? Like any tools that you use to help you track this or know what phase you're in? Anything like that, like as a first step for them to just kind of get used to even just recognizing their phases.
Right. So there's an app and it's called My Flow. And I know there's one that's just called Flow. So I really like to distinguish which one I like to use, but it's MyFLO. And that app, you can use it as your tracker, but it's not the type of tracker that's just like, okay, your period's going to start on this day. It gives you some of these tips and modifications right in the app. So if you're in follicular phase, it'll say this is how you can support excuse me, your mind, your body, your food, and it'll have the breakdown. So that's a great place to start. But then also thinking of this in sync with the seasons. So we as women go through very much like the seasons of the year in 28 days. So follicular is often comparable to spring. New ideas, outward energy. This is where the birds are starting to come out, and thinking of the foods that are sounding good during that time of year, or the foods that are fruitful during that time of year. Ovulation, summer, it's like to most, summer is like the yes, I live for this season, especially here in Minnesota. It's the time where everybody is out and about. This is where we are really like making sure that we are getting outside and around others, and kind of seeing how this is very much like the seasons. Fall, root vegetables, slowing down, being intentional, having the things that come into your mind and your body, whether it be nourishment or workout, be something that is giving you energy instead of depleting. It's inward. And then menstrual phase is that season of rest, inwardness, reflection, slow down. All of these different aspects are very much in sync with how nature works and revolves. So for me, it really was like, okay, especially when it came to luteal phase and menstrual phase, I'm like, okay, I need to honor my body going through this phase just like I would if there was the actual changes in the seasons going on. Because a lot of the foods that I listed when it came to menstrual and luteal were very much like the foods that you crave and the foods that are around in nature during those times, like with root vegetables during autumn, and then like soups, broth, cook down things, warming foods during menstrual phase is definitely supportive. But I would say to start, the easiest way to kind of start and notice some changes is going with the fitness element first. You know, knowing that you don't, if you're expecting your period any day, it's probably not a good time to go for that like high intensity, like way crazy workout. Try something else that's more supportive for that phase and see how it impacts everything else. And then you can kind of roll into nutrition. I have my podcast, Feminine Fitness Podcast, where I really do try. Yes, I know the science behind all of this, but what I try to do is bring that practicalness, like the example of the taco night. I also have a feminine fitness foundations program that is very like entry level. You know, you're in this phase, here's what you can do, and you're only focused on yourself, right? Like, because you're taking today, I took all 4 phases. But if we were to be sitting here having a conversation and you say, okay, Joelle, I'm in this phase, tell me what to avoid, tell me what to do to support this phase, it wouldn't feel like so much. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that is awesome. And I love that you said honor your body. Because again, that this isn't like um, a rule book. I don't want anyone listening to think of these as like a set of rules or another rule book or just a different type of diet. It's really not. It's just really another tool to help you honor your body, understand your body, and give yourself grace. And and it's like I say sometimes, just in my last episode, talked about questions that I ask myself while I'm eating. And one of them is, am I enjoying this? And just really asking yourself, like, am I eating this just to eat it, or am I actually enjoying this? And that can change on a daily, weekly basis. And so I love that you said honoring your body and how those foods can change and what we're craving, will change and stuff. So I think it's just so great for us to be aware of all of this and really use it to give ourselves grace and honor our body. So thank you so much for sharing all of this goodness with us. And where else can people find you if they want to connect with you?
The main place right now is through my podcast, Feminine Fitness. All updates, all things, all questions go through the podcast. So, subscribing to the podcast would be absolutely awesome. But I'm also daily on Instagram, kind of sharing more practical tips about cycle syncing and motherhood and all the other things on Instagram. But those are the 2 places I would really love for you ladies to come hang out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.